It started like any other flight. 2 women, 7 suitcases. A calm check-in at Heathrow Terminal 3, business class to Dubai. Smiles, small talk, passports scanned, boarding passes printed. No drama, no delay. The bags rolled up onto the belt, disappeared behind the rubber flaps, and that was that. No questions, no secondary screening, no raised eyebrows. They walked to the lounge, ordered drinks, scrolled through their phones, and waited for boarding to be called. From the outside, it was just another luxury trip. But inside those suitcases, beneath neatly folded clothes and rows of toiletries, something else was packed. Heavy, silent, wrapped tight in plastic and vacuum sealed. The kind of weight airport security scanners were never designed to care about. No drugs, no guns, no explosives, just cash. Millions in crisp, clean, untraceable notes. This is the story of how a luxury courier network quietly moved more than £100 million out of the UK to Dubai, and of the man who orchestrated it all without ever lifting a suitcase in public. He didn't look like a kingpin. No scars, no gangland reputation, no police record, just a quiet man from Dubai with a diplomatic surname, a polished image, and a passport that opened doors rather than closed them. On paper, Abdullah Muhammad Ali bin Bayat al-Falasi was the kind of person who belonged in business class. Behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Al-Falasi had built a system, not a one-off trip, not a lucky loophole, a machine, one that would move more criminal cash out of the UK than almost any individual before him. At its heart was a simple trade: cash in London, gold in Dubai. He started small. On New Year's Day 2020, while most people nursed hangovers and made resolutions they'd never keep, Al-Falasi walked into Heathrow with 11 suitcases. He didn't sneak. He didn't lie. He openly declared just under £700,000 in cash and boarded a flight to Dubai. It worked, so he did it again. Over 10 flights, he personally carried close to £6 million out of the country. Then, like any businessman hitting his ceiling, he realized there was only so much he could move alone. To scale, he needed bodies, he needed couriers, he needed a network. The method was brutally efficient. Clients believed to include organized crime groups and major drug traffickers handed over their cash in the UK. For a fee of around 10%, Al-Falasi and his people did everything else. They handled the couriers, the logistics, the fake paperwork, and the laundering at the other end. By the time his operation reached full capacity, more than £100 million had flowed through it. To give it a respectable face, he registered a company, Omnivest, also styled as Omniest, gold trading. On company letterhead, couriers carried forged letters claiming they were authorized cash transporters working for the business. Every flight was booked by Al-Falasi himself. He chose the airline, the route, the seats, business class, always. Not for comfort, but for baggage allowance, up to 4 large suitcases per passenger. He managed itineraries remotely, tracking his couriers from Dubai, keeping his own hands off the bags and his name away from the airport floors. Always in Dubai, always in the background, always silent. And it might have stayed that way, if not for one courier, one dog, and one suitcase that finally drew attention. She'd done it before. 3 trips, 3 easy paydays. No drama, no handcuffs, no headlines. Fly into Dubai, check into a resort, hand over the bags, enjoy the sun, then fly home like nothing ever happened. A few days away, a few more zeros in the bank. For Tara Hanlon, a recruitment manager from Leeds, it felt like she'd found a cheat code to life. No questions, no searches, no consequences. Until the 4th run. It was October 3rd, 2020, when Tara wheeled 5 large suitcases into Heathrow Terminal 5. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was another woman, Megan Reeves. To staff at the check-in desk, they were exactly what they claimed to be. 2 women heading off on a girls' trip to Dubai. Sun, cocktails, designer shopping. The luggage? Just a little excessive. But in business class, excess baggage looks normal. In reality, those 5 suitcases weighed more than anyone could see. Packed inside, under a thin disguise of clothes and toiletries, were the real contents. Tightly packed bricks of cash, vacuum sealed, wrapped in plastic, layered with coffee to throw off sniffer dogs, air fresheners stuffed in the gaps, Everything about it was designed to make the bags look, smell, and scan like nothing more than overpacking. On the outside, the cases were ordinary. On the inside, they held £1.9 million in notes. What Tara didn't know was that this time, eyes were already on her. Border Force officers had been watching flights to Dubai, tracking patterns, names, and baggage weights. The network had been running hot for months, and something about this movement of cash had caught attention. As Tara and Megan headed towards security, a detection dog locked onto the scent. This time, the coffee and perfume weren't enough. Tara was pulled aside and escorted to a private room. Routine, they told her. Just a check. She stuck to the script. She said the bags contained only clothes. She said she didn't know what her friend had packed. She said she was just going away for a break. But when officers opened the suitcases, the truth spilled out in neat, plastic-wrapped stacks. £1.9 million. Sterlings in bundles. Holiday over. If that was all they'd found, maybe the story would have ended with one arrest and a few quiet headlines. But Tara had something far more valuable than the cash. Her phone. On it, investigators found messages with a woman named Michelle Clark, the person who had recruited her into the network. Chat logs showed detailed instructions. When to check in, what to say, how to behave, what to avoid. There were references to earlier trips too. 3 previous journeys over the summer, carrying more than £3.5 million in total. And there was something else. A message sent just days before the October flight. Tara had reached out to Clark, asking for more names. She said she needed 12 more people who are fit, can't talk, and reliable. That single line told investigators everything. This wasn't a one-off favor. This was recruitment. This was scale. This was a pipeline. Tara Hanlon's arrest didn't just catch one courier. It snagged a thread. And as investigators began to pull, the hidden structure of the network started to show. There were more flights, more couriers, more cash. And at the center of many of those movements, one name kept appearing in those phone messages: Michelle Clark. By the time Tara's phone was unlocked, the cash in her suitcases was almost the least interesting thing in the room. Names, numbers, flight details, instructions, and in between them, one name that appeared again and again: Michelle Clark. Michelle wasn't a courier. She wasn't the one dragging suitcases through terminals or standing in security queues with a fake smile and a racing heart. She stayed behind the scenes, a voice on the phone, a name in encrypted chats, the person who made sure everyone else took the risk so she didn't have to. On paper, she looked harmless. A former Sky TV executive assistant from Leeds, a mother who had moved to Dubai with her husband and children for what looked like a fresh start. A normal life in a city of skyscrapers, brunches, and beach clubs. But while her social media and paperwork suggested family routine, her messages told a very different story. From Dubai, Michelle Clark was building something. Police later discovered that she was linked to almost every key courier in the operation. She was the one handling flights, sending forged documents, and issuing step-by-step instructions through encrypted chat groups. If you were carrying bags, chances were Michelle had booked your ticket, written your cover story, and told you exactly how to breathe at the check-in desk. She didn't just send messages. She built a system of control. To keep everything organized, she created a single group chat, a place where her couriers would be gathered, briefed, and managed. The name she chose sounded innocent, almost childish, like a joke shared between friends. Sunshine and lollipops. It sounded like a place for holiday plans and memes. In reality, it was the command center of one of the most tightly controlled cash-smuggling networks ever uncovered in the UK. Once you were vetted and accepted, you were added to Sunshine and lollipops. Inside, there were rules. No phone calls, no personal side chats, no questions that didn't need to be asked. Everything happened in short, clear, encrypted messages. Each time a job came up, couriers received instructions in stages. When to arrive at the airport, what time to check in, what to say if staff asked about the wait, how to answer if anyone mentioned money. They weren't just told what to do, they were told what not to do. No posting photos from the airport, no showing off business class tickets online, no casual mentions to friends. Silence was part of the deal. To tighten control further, each courier had to buy a pay-as-you-go burner phone. That phone existed for one purpose: that trip. You activated it shortly before you left. You used it only for sunshine and lollipops. And when you came home, you wiped it and waited. The luxury on the surface was part of the design. Flights were almost always Emirates business class, paid for using Al-Falasi's credit card. It looked professional, legitimate. Business travelers with multiple suitcases don't stand out in a premium cabin. And that ticket came with a big advantage. A higher baggage allowance, sometimes up to 4 large suitcases per person. More bags, more cash, fewer trips. On the Dubai side, handlers were waiting. Couriers would land, collect their bags, and pass through with a letter from Omnivest Gold Trading printed on letterhead, stamped and signed, claiming they were officially transporting cash for a legitimate business. The paperwork matched. The story sounded polished. Customs let them through. The drop was always the same. Hand over the bags, check into a resort, stay a night or two, fly home. Most couriers never saw the cash again once it left their hands. They didn't need to. Their job was done the moment the suitcase handle slipped from their fingers. Most never met Michelle Clark in person. Those who did described her the same way. Calm, convincing, professional. She carried herself like someone who worked for an embassy, someone who knew the system and had every right to use it. And under that calm exterior, the network grew one courier, one suitcase, one carefully managed trip at a time. They didn't look like criminals. No shaved heads, no gang tattoos, no tabloid mugshots. If you'd seen them at the airport, you'd probably have thought they were influencers, consultants, or people heading to a work conference in the sun. That was the point. The network didn't rely on hardened gang members. It relied on people who blended in. Most of them were approached directly by Michelle Clark. Some were friends. Some were friends of friends. Others were introduced quietly, offered what sounded like the easiest money they'd ever make. A quick trip to Dubai, a few days in a luxury hotel, a suitcase or two to carry for a gold trading company, and a payment of thousands for their time. No drugs, no weapons, no violence, just suitcases and a letter to explain it all. Jovin was the image of the operation, a former model. She was already known in certain circles for her past relationship with boxer Joe Calzaghe. She met Michelle Clark in Knightsbridge, one of London's wealthiest districts. Over coffee and conversation, Clark laid out the offer. £3,000 for a single trip, plus a luxury stay in Dubai. All the paperwork would be taken care of. The company was legitimate on paper. The money was for business. Jovin said yes. Then she brought someone else in. Her partner, Jonathan Johnson, worked in executive recruitment. On paper, he was cautious, sending texts before one flight about the luggage looking ridiculous, worried that the sheer volume of suitcases drew attention. But worry didn't stop him from boarding. Together, across 2 trips, they helped move nearly £3 million in cash. Another name in the network, Amy Harrison from Surrey. Quiet, low profile, no thirst for the spotlight. She wasn't just a pair of hands on the handle of a suitcase, she became part of the planning. Amy took 3 trips, carrying more than £6 million across 15 suitcases. She helped with logistics, from packing to paperwork. Those who worked with her described her as solid, reliable, the kind of person who didn't ask too many questions as long as the instructions were clear. Then there was Beatrice Auti. At 26, from Fulham, with a background in media, she wasn't the stereotypical image of organized crime. At first, she hesitated. The idea didn't sit right, but Michelle Clark knew how to make doubts disappear. She sent stamped certificates, neat flight bookings, and official-looking documents from Omnivest Gold Trading. Over time, Beatrice's role grew. She moved from courier to organizer, helping coordinate journeys for others, arranging 16 trips alongside the runs she made herself. Not everyone was young and digital. Nicola Essen was older, quieter, with far less of an online presence. She joined through offline contacts, the old-fashioned way. She flew business class and carried 19 suitcases across 3 trips. Almost £6.5 million passed through her hands alone. To airport staff, she looked like any other older professional traveling with too much luggage. And there were more. Some barely existed online at all. Shadows in the digital age. Mohammed Ilas kept to himself. No entourage. No visible trail. He made his trips alone, following sealed instructions and keeping quiet. Megan Reeves came in through Tara Hanlon. She said she was drowning in debt, that this was her way out. One trip turned into plans for 13. Stacy Borg moved in almost complete silence, no online footprint, no visible persona, but she flew often. Her suitcases always heavy, her documents always forged and polished. And then there was Paige Henry, just 25. Young, composed, and trusted with more money than most people will ever see. Over 4 trips, she moved more than £8 million without a single major mistake. To staff, she looked like any other young woman who'd done well for herself and was spending it on travel. Some of them told themselves it was legitimate. Some chose not to ask. Others tried not to think about it at all. They shared one belief: they would get in, get out, and never get caught. But moving that kind of money, tens of millions in cash, doesn't work on luck alone. Behind every suitcase was a system. Behind every smooth airport crossing was a method that had to be almost perfect. And that machine, the engine that made all this possible, was as cold and calculated as the money it carried. Behind every smiling courier rolling suitcases through departures, there was a machine running quietly in the background. A machine built for one purpose: turning dirty UK cash into clean Dubai wealth without anyone in uniform noticing. It began far from the airport. Cash didn't come in from banks or businesses. It came from gangs, street dealers, drug traffickers, the kind of money you don't pay into a high street branch without alarms going off. Bundles of notes were collected across the UK, then funneled into London, not to offices or shops, but to rented flats. These weren't homes. They were counting houses. No sofas, no family photos, no TVs. Just bare rooms, tables, chairs, industrial counting machines, vacuum sealers, and rolls of plastic wrap. Workers, trusted contacts, sat for hours feeding notes into counters, bundling stacks together, wrapping them tight until they became solid bricks of cash. Each suitcase had a target, around £500,000. Once the amount was right, the packing ritual began. At the very bottom went the cash bricks, rows of tightly packed notes, pressed together, vacuum sealed to reduce volume and remove air. Around them, the smell was disguised. Coffee grounds sprinkled in, mouthwash bottles, scented dryer sheets and air fresheners stuffed into the corners and pushed between gaps. Every layer served a purpose. Confuse sniffer dogs, disguise the feel, blur the shapes. On top of that went the illusion. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, hairdryers, chargers, the exact mess you'd expect from someone overpacking for a week away. Close the case, lock it, label it, move on to the next one. The method was solid, but what really made it possible wasn't just clever packing, it was the system they exploited. UK airport security is built to stop threats, not money. At Heathrow, suitcases go through advanced 3D scanners, using computed tomography, the same kind of technology used to view inside the human body in hospitals. The software is programmed to flag explosives, weapons, and suspicious irregular items. If the system spots something dangerous, it alerts an officer, who checks the image. Cash doesn't register as a threat, it's just dense material in a bag. If nothing explosive or weapon-shaped appears, the image slips past, never looked at by human eyes. The bag rolls through, the passenger walks on. As far as security is concerned, the job is done. On top of that, the law itself leaves a gap. Under UK rules, anyone leaving the country with more than £10,000 in cash is supposed to declare it. But here's the flaw. It relies almost entirely on honesty. There is no automatic system scanning every suitcase for currency. No routine cash-specific checks on outbound baggage. If you don't declare, it's your secret, unless someone has a reason to suspect you. That silence, that assumption of honesty, was exactly what the network lived on. Once the couriers were airborne, the risk dropped dramatically. By the time wheels hit the runway in Dubai, most of the danger was behind them. And that's where Michelle Clark's paperwork came into play. Each courier traveled with a letter from Omnivest Gold Trading, printed on company letterhead, stamped and signed. The document claimed they were authorized to carry large sums of cash on behalf of the business, moving funds for legitimate trading purposes. When Dubai Customs asked questions, the letter came out. The details matched the story. The bags were waved through. On the other side of arrivals, handlers waited. The handover was always fast and clean. Couriers would meet the contact, pass over the suitcases, and walk away. No counting on the spot, no arguments about amounts. The trust was in the system. not the individuals. After that, they checked into a resort, spent a night or two, then flew home like any other holidaymaker. For months, it worked. Suitcase after suitcase, flight after flight, courier after courier. More than £100 million moved through this process. The network didn't collapse because the system failed. It collapsed because people did. One dog, one search, one phone in the wrong hands, and the machine that had run so smoothly suddenly found itself under a microscope. And from that moment, every suitcase that had slipped through started to leave a trail. Once the first thread was pulled, the whole tapestry started to come apart. Tara Hanlon's arrest was loud, the suitcases, the cash, the headlines. What followed was the opposite. No press conferences, no big announcements, just investigators working quietly in the background, using everything she'd left behind. Her phone wasn't just evidence, it was a map. From it, the National Crime Agency began building a picture. Names, dates, flights, baggage weights, ticket payments, passport scans. Each detail was another dot on a growing diagram. Messages pointed to Michelle Clark. Flight bookings pointed to the same credit card. Cover letters pointed to the same company, Omnivest Gold Trading. Piece by piece, the network stopped being invisible. And Tara wasn't the only domino. The next to fall was Zdenek, often reported as Jane Kamarit, a Czech national stopped at Heathrow just weeks later. Same destination, same airline, same packing methods, same fake Omnivest paperwork. Inside his luggage, officers found about £1.3 million in cash. Different face, same system. Then the arrests spread north. In March 2022, at Manchester Airport, officers moved in on Joe Larvin and Jonathan Johnson, the former model Jovin's partner. By that point, they'd already flown twice, in August and September 2020, smuggling nearly £5 million between them. Border Force had flagged their journeys months earlier, but now the NCA had the bigger picture, and the time was right. Soon after, Amy Harrison was taken down in a coordinated sweep. She'd flown 3 times with more than £6 million spread across 15 suitcases, not just carrying but helping with logistics and packing. Her messages, like Tara's, linked back to Michelle Clark and to the same Dubai-based machine. Beatrice, deeply involved, both as courier and organizer, was arrested at her home during raids in May 2021. By then, officers already had records tying her to multiple trips and to arrangements made on behalf of other couriers. The pattern repeated with Nicola Essen, the 5-6-year-old from Leeds. 3 business-class trips, 19 suitcases, nearly £6.5 million. One courier in particular caused a stir for a different reason. Mohammed Ilas had made 2 runs. On one of them, something went wrong. A bag vanished in transit. It later turned up back at Heathrow, still sealed, still packed with £431,000 inside. No one had opened it. No one had claimed it. That forgotten suitcase lit him up on the radar. When he flew again, Border Force was waiting. He was arrested on arrival, his quietly anonymous role already traced through booking data and messages. Each arrest unlocked the next. Phones were seized. Chats were recovered. Flight bookings, passport details, email receipts. All of them led upward, converging on the same points. The same flight account, the same corporate letterhead, the same funding source. And above all of it, one name: Abdullah Mohammed Ali bin Bayat al-Falasi. There was one problem. He was in Dubai. No extradition, no easy way to bring him into a UK courtroom. For months, his name sat at the center of the file but outside the reach of handcuffs. The NCA had the structure, the evidence, the couriers, but not the architect. Then, he came to them. In December 2021, al-Falasi boarded a flight to London with his wife and children. No disguise, no alias. They stayed in a luxury Belgravia apartment owned by his in-laws. To this day, no one outside the investigation is entirely sure why he came. Maybe he believed he was safe. Maybe he thought his role was still invisible, buried under layers of couriers and front companies. He was wrong. Around lunchtime, NCA officers moved in. 3 phones were seized. Inside were the missing pieces: photos of couriers' passports, messages coordinating handovers, itineraries, packing lists, suitcase photos. Everything needed to prove not just that the system existed, but that he was the one running it. Charged with money laundering, al-Falasi appeared at Isleworth Crown Court in the summer of 2022. He pleaded guilty to removing criminal property more than £100 million laundered out of the UK. The judge described it as a considerable network under your charge and sentenced him to 9 years and 7 months in prison. A confiscation order followed, £2.5 million in assets seized, including a Mercedes G63, a Ford pickup, and 3 Rolex watches. The order was satisfied. On paper, every penny was paid back. The couriers faced their own reckoning. Tara Hanlon, the woman whose arrest cracked the case open, received 34 months in prison. Judge Karen Holt said she was vulnerable, but fully aware of what she was doing. Zdenek Kamarit was sentenced to 2 years and 10 months. Jovin received 24 months, suspended for 2 years, plus 200 hours of unpaid work. Jonathan Johnson was given a 12-month suspended sentence. Amy Harrison and Nicola Essen both received suspended sentences after pleading guilty and cooperating with investigators. Beatrice, more involved than most, was handed the harshest courier sentence, 42 months behind bars. Others still await or have quietly received their sentences. And Michelle Clark, the handler at the heart of the operation, the woman behind Sunshine and Lollipops, remains under investigation. She hasn't left the UAE since late 2020. She's reported as barred from travel and remains wanted by UK authorities, but for now, still beyond the dock. In the end, the case exposed a network that treated airports like motorways. No guns, no threats, just suitcases filled with cash and a system that let them pass unseen. So what do you make of it? The money, the method, the sentences. Did justice go far enough for a network that moved over £100 million? Or did some of them walk away too lightly for the risks they took and the damage that money funded? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more real stories like this, how they're built, how they collapse, and the people caught in the middle, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and follow us here. There's always another case waiting behind the next suitcase.